Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and it is Wednesday, which means it's time for our weekly redraft. We have done 2020, 2019, 2018, and now today we are doing the 2017 draft. Here's the initial top 10. We do the top 10 here. Nico Hischier, Nolan Patrick, Miro Heiskanen, Cale Makar, Elias Pettersson, Cody Glass, Elias Anderson, Casey Middlestat, Michael Rasmussen, and Owen Tippett. So, couple studs, couple solid role players, couple straight up busts. And when looking at the 2017 draft, I think there is kind of like a consensus top 10. How you order that is definitely going to be controversial. It was controversial when I posted the initial thumbnail, which I have since changed. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a heated debate probably for this top 7, and then like 8 through 10, there's a serious debate. But I think I have the right 10 is going to be there. It just depends what order I have it in. And of course, with this, we mainly just look at who we think is going to have the best career based on what they've done previously, based on, of course, what matters the most is what they've done last season, especially with these guys that are starting to reach their prime. And based on that, kind of project forward what the overall career will look like. If it is close between certain guys, we go to kind of positional value, what those teams at the time back in 2017 had. Did they have 2 amazing forward prospects, no defenseman prospects, or were they loaded in goal, so they didn't need a goalie? That's what we consider, and we are going to start it off. I don't think there's going to be any controversy at first overall, as New Jersey Devils, they selected Nico Hischier initially. Now they are going to be selecting Cale Makar. I think at this point, he's on pace to finish his career as a top 10 defenseman of all time. Will he get to top 5? That's kind of the question, considering the fact that 26 years old, this guy has 428 points in only 395 games. He was the fastest defenseman in NHL history to reach 100 goals, and he has a Conn Smythe, he has a cup, he has 2 Norrises, probably would have had 4 Norrises at this point if he was able to stay healthy in 2021 and 2023. He's awesome. He's Cale Makar at the end of the day. Maybe the best goal-scoring defenseman we have ever seen. There's really just not much to be said. For the New Jersey Devils, at the time, you're obviously just going best player available here because Makar is clearly the best player available, but they were just starting kind of like their rebuild, or I guess the following year they would actually end up making the playoffs because of Taylor Hall. But they just go best player available, and that best player is, of course, Cale Makar at 2nd overall. It maybe gets a little bit controversial, but I'm pretty confident in this. The Philadelphia Flyers initially went with Nolan Patrick. I'm going to have them going with Miro Heiskanen now. When looking at the Flyers at the time, they did have Sanheim in the system. He was kind of like their top prospect, as well as Travis Konechny. But Miro Heiskanen's like levels ahead of Travis Sanheim, who I do like a lot, and I think is a little bit underrated. But yeah, similar vein here. You just go with the best player available. And Miro Heiskanen was NHL ready relatively soon, and in 2020 had one of the best playoff runs we've ever seen by a defenseman at like 20, 21 years old, having 26 points in 27 games, playing 26 minutes a night. And then by 2023, just fully established himself as a top 4 to 8 defenseman with a 73-point season. He's flipping fantastic defensively, 6'3", skates like the wind. There's really no deficiencies in his game. Maybe you'd want a little bit more offensively. But yeah, this guy's an absolute stud, and Philadelphia gets a franchise defenseman, one that they have not had since, Chris Pronger back in 2010. They go Miro Heiskanen. It kind of starts at number 3 with the Dallas Stars, though. You could go a bunch of ways. In my opinion, 3 through 7, it's kind of up in the air. The Dallas Stars initially went with Miro Heiskanen, no longer on the board. I'm going to have them go with Jason Robertson, especially just because we know how Jason Robertson would develop on the Dallas Stars. When looking at the Dallas Stars at the time, they did have Tyler Seguin, who still is extremely elite at 25 years old, as well as Rupe Hintz in the system, developing well. So it's not like they had this. I agree, a number 1 center is more important than a number 1 winger, but for Dallas in the situation, it's not like they needed a number 1 center per se. And when looking at Jason Robertson, he probably, outside of Makar, has had the best single season by anybody in this draft. You could maybe argue Elias Pettersson in 2023, but he had that 46-goal, 109-point season, 4th place finish in the Hart, as well as the year before that, putting up 45-goal pace, well over a point per game. And even the last 2 years, he's still been at 80 points. This year, 35 goals. And this year, he was coming off leg surgery. I think he had a broken leg. So he kind of started off slow, but then finished the final 54 games at 44-goal, 51 assists, 95-point pace. I expect him to just be that consistent 40-ish goal, 90 to 95-point elite winger. And especially the defensive aspect of his game has really grown in recent years. And he just turned into one of the best 2-way wingers in the NHL. So he's gone with Dallas. We know what he turns into in Dallas, but I definitely could understand you having someone else here at third overall. At fourth overall, the Colorado Avalanche initially went with Cale Makar, no longer on the board. I'm going to go with Nick Suzuki here. When looking at it, there's only centers remaining in terms of like the guys in this tier. So they go with Suzuki, who I think would be a perfect second line center to Nathan MacKinnon, more of a two-way defensive guy, but still has a lot of offensive upside that I'm about to talk about. Suzuki was NHL ready relatively soon, especially considering he wasn't a top 10 pick. He had 41 points in 70 games in his first season, was very good defensively off rip, then put up 3 around 60-ish point pace seasons, and then in 2024 really breaks out with 33 goals, 44 assists, 77 points. This year takes another step, having 89 points and 30 goals, and he was one of the best players in the NHL point blank period for the final third of the season, one of the most valuable players in the NHL this season. So when looking at him, he's also an August birthday, so he's one of the youngest guys in this draft and almost was a 2018 draftee, so the late breakout makes a little bit more sense in terms of that. Just awesome two-way guy. He in prior years, he has been that really good defensive guy, but the offense has really gotten to that next level where you can maybe see him put up a 95-point season. Would it shock you if he goes for 100 in 2 to 3 years? No, it wouldn't. And for Colorado, again, they've been competing at a very high level, basically off rip. Maybe you would want a guy that was more NHL ready, like a Nico Hischier, but still, Suzuki was good right off rip, and by 2022 was a low-end first-line center. So I think Nick Suzuki makes a lot of sense. For the Colorado Avalanche at 4th overall, at 5th overall, the Vancouver Canucks initially went with Elias Pettersson. I'm going to go with Nico Hischier here. When looking at it, Hischier immediately jumped up to the NHL level and looked like a very worthy first overall pick, having 52 points, playing alongside Hart-level Taylor Hall, but he was like the second best player on that team. The next 3 years, the Devils did kind of stink. As a result, he didn't absolutely kill it, but then in 2022, got back on track on a 63-point Devils team and had 60 points in 70 games. The following year in 2023, 80 points and finished the Selke runner-up to Patrice Bergeron. At that point, was kind of anointed as the next great defensive center. Barkov obviously bounced back and has won the last 2 Selkes, but still, he's an awesome two-way guy that gives you low 30s goals, around 70 to 80 point pace. He's awesome. Vancouver gets just a consistent number 1 center, which we're going to talk about Elias Pettersson relatively soon. Has not been as consistent, so I think they just go with Hischier here, who still has a very high ceiling. At 6th overall, the Vegas Golden Knights. They are now going to be going with Elias Pettersson instead of initially going with Cody Glass. When looking at Pettersson, you can make an argument. If you think that this year was just a fluke, you think he's going to be 1,000% healthy, you could say that he goes second, and I wouldn't call you crazy. But this season was very concerning. He has tendonitis in his knee at 26 years old. That is very concerning. So I'm going with 6. Compared to Suzuki, compared to Hischier, compared to Robertson, who've all been at least very good every single year the last 2 to 3 years. Yeah, I'm going with Pettersson here at 6th overall. And especially for Vegas, it does make a crap ton of sense for them to go with Pettersson, considering he was really good right off rip. 66 points, won the Calder in his first season, and then was a consistent 70-ish point center. So for Vegas, who has been competitive since they walked into the NHL, they do want more of an NHL-ready guy compared to maybe some of the other guys that did take a little bit longer to develop that we're going to talk about. So yeah, Pettersson's awesome. When he's fully healthy, he can maybe get back to being 90, 100 points, awesome defensively. There's just serious concern considering the last 18 months. Even the end of the 2023-2024 season, he slowed down. I think he had 17 points in his final 27 games and wasn't good in those playoffs. So the fact it has been lingering so much, similarly to a Thatcher Demko, although he's been a lot more available than Thatcher Demko, there's serious concern that he might just not be the same player going forward. So maybe I'm just playing it safe, but going with someone like Hischier and Suzuki, where I know what I can expect from them, and they may even take another step on top of that compared to the mystery box of Elias Pettersson. Yeah, and again, this is taking out contract. I'm not factoring in that he's making $11.6 million. Just there is concern given the injuries. It's not like he just tore his ACL and is coming back from that. It's a weird injury that has kind of lingered for the last 18 months. So I'm a little bit concerned with Elias Pettersson. Next up, the New York Rangers at 7th overall. They initially went with Elias Anderson. They are now going to be going with Robert Thomas. I think there's a strong case for Ottinger here and also at 6th overall. It's just the problem is Vegas wanted to win now initially, so I gave them Elias Pettersson. And with the New York Rangers, they did have Shesterkin, who put up a .937 and won the KHL as the starter in that 2017 season at 21 years old. He was a top 3 goalie prospect in the NHL. So they go with Robert Thomas, who fits the timeline well. well in terms of their rebuild. That was relatively a rushed rebuild considering Robert Thomas got it to the NHL level around 2019. And then by 2022 really broke out. And that, of course, was the season where the New York Rangers finally put it together in terms of making the Eastern Conference Finals. So they get their legit number one center when looking at Robert Thomas in that 2022 season. 77 points in 72 games. Did take a step back the following year with 65 points in 73, but got back on track last year with 86 and 82. Back on track. He was still very good, but 86 and 82 last year. And this year, 81 and 70 points. And like Suzuki was the leading scorer in the NHL for the final third of the season. He helped will the St. Louis Blues into a playoff spot. I feel like people did not realize just how good he was down the stretch. And right now he's 10th in the NHL in terms of assists the last two seasons. One of the best playmakers and especially passers. The micro stats in terms of his passing are just absolutely off the charts. So Robert Thomas goes to the New York Rangers, who is a legit good number one center. I think he was within my top 35 and the top 50 players in the NHL, and in my opinion, a little bit underrated right now. I'm not going to say he's the most underrated player in the NHL. I hate when people like go to that extreme, but he's definitely underrated right now in the New York Rangers, although they probably would have messed up Robert Thomas's development. They go with him. At 8th overall, the Buffalo Sabres initially went with Casey Middlestat. I'm going to have them going with Jake Ottinger. I think you could probably put Ottinger at 6th potentially or 7th, but just given what the needs and the timeline of those teams, I think he falls down to 8th. But potentially with an Ottinger, Eichel, and Reinhart core, maybe Buffalo ends up making it work, considering Ottinger actually got to the NHL level relatively soon and then put up a 9-11, a 9-14, and then a 9-19 in 62 games and finished 5th in the Vezina. The last 2 years have not been as good in the regular season, but this guy is playoff proven and shows that he can handle 60 games in the regular season. He has been a massive reason why stolen games for the Dallas Stars and why they've made back-to-back Western Conference Finals. At 9th overall, the Detroit Red Wings initially went with Rasmussen. I'm going to have them going with Jeremy Swayman. Similarly to Pettersson, I could see you having him much lower or even much higher, just considering his first 3 years were so good, but then this year was so goddamn bad. His first 3 years, a 9-14, a 9-20, and a 9-16. He was splitting games with Ullmark, but the underlying numbers were damn good. It wasn't just the Bruins defense. He looked like one of, if not the most promising young goalie alongside Ottinger in the entire NHL. This year has a brutal contract negotiation that takes them through training camp. He didn't get to train with the team. I think he signed like a day before their opener against the Florida Panthers. And as a result, just a brutal season with an 892 and like -9 goals saved to have expected. It was very bad. I'm still betting on the 26-year-old that in the college level, in the NHL level prior to the season was so good. I think this was just a down year and everything for the most part went wrong with the Boston Bruins outside of David Pastrnak, especially when looking at his two best defensemen. Lindholm played like 17 games. McAvoy played 50 games. So I think, will he live up to the contract? I don't know, but I think he's going to be a very good starter, a good starter going forward and get back on track. And for Detroit, who are just starting to enter kind of their rebuild, they get goalie locked up and don't have to worry about that going forward. And then lastly, in the 10 spot, the Florida Panthers initially went with Owen Tippett. I have them now going with Martin Necas. They get an extremely talented wing to play with their centers, like an Alexander Barkov, eventually getting a guy like Sam Bennett. And I don't think, unlike Tippett, who eventually got traded for a first-round pick, or him and a first-round pick got packaged for like 30 games with Claude Giroux, I don't think they're making that mistake with Martin Necas, considering he was a very good player at the time. He had like 3 good seasons as a solid second liner for Carolina, had one 71-point season in the mix. This year started out absolutely insane. Linsanity run, 37 points in 22 games. Some people were like throwing him in like top 30 in the NHL discussions. He did kind of come back down to the earth, but once he got traded to Colorado Avalanche, playing with Nathan McKinnon on that top power play and at even strength, was just a little bit below a point per game. I think on Colorado, he's going to be 75 to 80 points, but there's definitely some Colorado inflation with that. But still, a very good top 6 forward, very solid first liner, and I think he's the clear pick at this point. I think the top 10 is kind of set in stone, and as you can see, I'm about to show that in the honorable mentions. All right, here we are for the honorable mentions. No like serious difference makers outside of those top 10. There are some decent pieces. As you can see, Casey Middlestat maybe would have cracked this like this time last year ahead of a Martin Necas, considering he had like back-to-back 50-ish point seasons. Batherson, you can make an argument over Necas. I just think the high-end offensive Necas is a little bit more. Nick Hague got paid like he potentially should be in a top 10 redraft. We're going through it. Owen Tippett looked like after that first season in Philadelphia, maybe would be cracking something like this. Has not quite been as good in recent years. Gabe Vilardi, I could see an argument over Natchez. I just like Natchez's skill and ability to drive a line a little bit more. But Vilardi's a great first line guy in Winnipeg. And then outside of that, there's Sandberg. I guess if he stacks another extremely elite season, but even then, I still wouldn't have him over Natchez. And that's kind of it. The goaltenders are UPL, Stuart Skinner, who are not cracking this redraft. It's kind of like they have amazing players. The top 7 is great, but outside of that, the depth in this draft really isn't there, especially Hito with his concussions. Ferraro really just never took a step. It's a very interesting draft. Again, to run it down one more time, we have Cale Makar going to the New Jersey Devils, Miro Heiskanen to the Philadelphia Flyers, Jason Robertson going to the Dallas Stars, like 36 picks earlier. At 4th overall, Nick Suzuki to the Colorado Avalanche. 5th, Nico Hischier to the Vancouver Canucks, Elias Pettersson to the Vegas Golden Knights, Robert Thomas to the New York Rangers, Jake Ottinger to the Buffalo Sabres. At 9th, Jeremy Swayman to the Detroit Red Wings, and Martin Necas to the Florida Panthers. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? Again, I think 1 is obvious. 2, I think Heiskanen, you kind of got to pencil in there, but there's maybe something of a debate. 3 through 7, you guys are probably going to kill me for. And then 8 through 10, there also could be strong debates there. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.